Okay. Good afternoon and welcome to the MOCIL 2023 Kickoff to Advocacy. We're really excited as the legislative committee for MOCIL putting this together just to kind of get us started with the 2023 legislative session, to hopefully share some information on why it's important to be here and to be ready, and then just some other tips and things that you can use. We are recording this so that you can share it with your staff who were not able to attend, but we have a great lineup today. And that would include Shannon Porter. Oh, well, I am Shelby Butler. I work here at Empower Abilities. I'm the Director of IL Services and Public Policy, and I'm on the Legislative Committee. We have Shannon Porter, our ED here at Empower Abilities. We have Audrey, who's an MSU grad student working with us. We have Josh Cressman, who we just hired as our part-time disability advocate. We have Kendra Burgess, who's the public policy advocate at the Whole Person. We have Jeanette Ma Oxford, the new advocacy director at Paraquad, I believe is her title, but she can share more. And then we have Jackie Barget, who is our new lobbyist from Barget and Associates. So great lineup. And the reason, like I said, we're here is because the legislative session started, I think it was a little over a week ago, but it's underway. The governor has mentioned aging in place and seniors in his executive order that we'll talk a little bit more about, and just knowing that the departments are presenting their budgets. We know we have a lot of things that, you know, are at stake with the budget and with some other legislative processes. So in January, the budget comes out, testimony begins. We think that's going to start pretty soon. In February, they'll divide up into more targeted committees. In March, we have a lot of legislative opportunities like Disability Rights Legislative Day, and then spring break where legislators will be back in their districts. And then we actually have an Independent Living Day that MOCIL puts together that'll happen at the end of March. And then the budget has to be passed by mid-May. So just a lot going on from January to May. And it seems like, you know, sometimes we're more reactive and we want to get ahead of the work. So with that, I'm going to now turn it over to Shannon.
Thank you. So I just wanted to kind of give a state of the situation with home and community-based services, and starting with what we've learned from COVID-19. The pandemic really demonstrated why home and community-based services are not only essential services, but the preferred method of services. And when we saw how those who were receiving service at home were a lower risk in contracting COVID than those who were in a congregate setting and living in nursing homes. And there was a big push to try to get people out of nursing homes, which was a really challenging time to try to move people out into the community during the time of the pandemic. But we also saw that family caregivers are really the most stable and reliable source of caregivers. Those who have a vested interest in the health and well-being of the people receiving services were the ones that showed up every day, not just family, but people who care about the person who's receiving the services. But unfortunately, that population only makes up a portion of the caregiver workforce, and we saw a lot of people who went without care and continue to go without care and receiving the essential services that they need. Next slide. Okay, so as we move to a post-COVID environment, we found ourselves facing a new challenge that we really hadn't anticipated with this workforce shortage, as the baby boomers exiting the workforce kind of en masse with all the changes that resulted of the pandemic, and we have not had enough workers joining the workforce to even out that balance. We've seen this workforce shortage that has created a competitive environment with home and community-based services trying to compete with other industries and different sectors to recruit and retain employees. And unfortunately, the home and community-based services programs aren't not structured to compete with for-profit businesses. We now have an additional barrier on top of the workforce shortage with waiting weeks for background checks to approve someone to work. And that can make getting essential care sometimes impossible for people by the time they've hired someone. And with that background process taking weeks, sometimes that potential employee will move on to another opportunity because they can't wait weeks to be hired and start receiving wages. But home and community-based service providers are not only competing with each other for employees, but also with other departments. The Department of Mental Health service providers have different funding structures. And so we find ourselves competing for the same employees to provide care. In the next slide. This graphic shows not only how the CDS reimbursement rate hasn't kept pace with the minimum wage throughout the years, but also the growing disparity between the agency model and the consumer-directed services model. You can see that the flat funding that we've had throughout the last 5 years has restricted the CDS program's ability to hire and retain employees when they can make higher wages in other sectors or in other programs. It's also important to understand that the services are also limited by the nursing home reimbursement rate. There's a rate cap. Both of the programs under home and community-based services are capped. And although we've seen a significant rate increase in the last year, the amount of services people are able to receive actually decreased because of this nursing home rate connection that we're trying to address this year. Next slide. So what we're looking at are the risks that people on these services are facing. And the reality is that they're not receiving the care that they need to maintain their health and their safety. People are going without care. And through that can lead to negative outcomes, worsening health conditions, increased emergency room visits or hospitalizations, or nursing home admissions. But Centers for Independent Living provide more than just home and community-based services. We do more than other types of providers do for people with disabilities. We're disability experts. We provide a wide scope of services that can be key in supporting people during this crisis. And it's now more than ever, we need to provide our wraparound services and explore ways that we can create independence through IL skills, assistive technology, or home modifications programs. Next slide. One of the things that I see in the Executive Order 2301 is an opportunity for some positive changes. The governor's office recognizes the importance of the effectiveness of services, and they're working to find better solutions for seniors and people with disabilities. We can and should be a part of finding those long-term solutions. It's important that we look at how the programs are designed to support people with disabilities to live their best life and are working or not working to assist and assist in this process of envisioning new and better ways to provide services. But it's also very important that these solutions make sense for people with disabilities, but also the service providers, and then also for the state budget. I think those are three important components that as we explore and move forward, we need to be cognizant of the participants in these programs and how it affects them and how they work. The governor's new initiative to focus on aging in place is in line with our mission to serve those aging adults and help them live their best and independent life. Thank you.
Thank you, Shannon. So next we have Audrey, and she is going to introduce herself and then offer herself as a resource. We've been working with Audrey since the fall, and she is at Missouri State University. So Audrey.
Sorry. My name is Audrey. I am studying physical therapy program in Missouri State right now. I'm here just to help people to understand what is really going on with individual, not just consumers, but also the caregivers themselves. So I already gotten chance to talk to around 10 people since last fall when I first joined. And then I realized that there are a lot of needs, there are a lot of circumstances that we really have to consider because there are a lot of different different environments and different needs. So it's interesting to listen to them, to know what they want to share with us. And then at the moment, I only interview people in Springfield, but I wish that I could have a chance to access to more people to understand how we can, help each other to see how we can improve the current situation. Well, and then I have my contact information here, so I really open myself up for future interviews or whoever who wants to share with us, because we really want to listen to their stories, listen to their experiences, and whatever they want to share with us.
Thank you, Audrey. And this PowerPoint will be shared afterwards, so you'll have her contact information. And then I thought it'd be good to also introduce Josh Cressman. He's a disability advocate here in Springfield who also wants to spread his wings and talk to people, outside of this area. So Josh, do you want to say hi?
Hey, everybody. I'm Josh Cressman, and I just wanted to kind of give you a little bit of my personal background. 11 years ago, I was in a diving accident and had a C456 injury, which left me paralyzed from the shoulders down. And I have some functionability with my arms and in my shoulders, but basically from the shoulders down, or basically the chest line down, I'm paralyzed. But with that, that was 11 years ago. And why all of this is important to me is because there is a lack of coverage for caregivers in the industry. You can't get any insurance besides Medicaid, that nobody really covers anything for caregivers. And with that shortage, I'm trying to be able to gather caregiver coverages, allowing not only the caregivers to have a platform to come to, but those in need, and to basically bring those two together and find a way to make that a much easier transition for people to find care for people in my situation or with other disabilities, and people that need that that kind of help with their ADLs during the morning time or in the evening time or throughout the day. So yeah, I would really like to focus on that, and I've got my information at the bottom of the screen there. So if you can, if you have any ideas, or if you have anybody that that we can bring to the platform and get their information and kind of talk to them, I would love to be able to talk to them and give them as much information as I can.
Thank you, Josh.
Yeah.
And next up, my clicker's not working very good. We have Kendra, who's going to dive a little bit deeper into some other legislative priorities. Kendra, are you there?
Kendra, we're not hearing you.
Okay, so I was sharing my screen, but you guys couldn't hear my audio. So I'm guessing I can't do both at the same time. So Shannon, if you wouldn't mind to do that for me, I'd appreciate it. And all my links are in the bottom of those notes on the presentation slide. So there we go. Technology, right? So again, my name is Kendra Burgess, and I currently serve as the Public Policy Coordinator here at the Whole Person, which is a Center for Independent Living out of Kansas City. And I am part of the MOCIL Legislative Advocacy Group, and happy to be here with you guys today. And so I'm going to briefly touch on some of our MOCIL legislative priorities for the 2023 session, and also talk about the bills, some of the bills that we're tracking and how you can follow along with what we're tracking for this year, and then how you can participate in our legislative action alerts. Next slide.
Is that the right one?
There we go. Yes. So this screen says 2024, but this will go through 2023 into 2024, of course. But MOCIL, we envision a state where people of all disabilities and all ages receive safe, quality care and the funding necessary to deliver those services. And so Shannon kind of touched on it earlier, Sharon, excuse me, but we need funding for those services. So we provide advocacy for many of the services that people rely on in the home. And so this year we will be advocating for an $1 million increase in the budget for independent living services in the state of Missouri to bring those services closer to the national average. We will also be focused on education, employment, and transition services, including improvements to the Ticket to Work program so that individuals with disabilities can work and participate in society in terms of their employment, and not be afraid of losing their benefits in the process. And our sister seal out of St. Louis is championing that legislation as they do every year. So feel free to engage in advocacy alerts as they come out for Ticket to Work. And then also in terms of healthcare, MOCIL opposes managed care. And so making sure that, that process is not bogged down in that type of bureaucracy. And then also voting. We monitor voting legislation so that people with disabilities can maintain access to their fundamental right to advocate for themselves on the systemic and individual level. So if you want to know more about those legislative priorities, you can visit our MOCIL website by visiting www.mocil.org/. And you can visit our webpage there called Our Work, and you can see the number of other issues that we are focused on. We visit the Capitol all the time. So if you ever want to visit the Capitol with us, feel free. Have a legislative advocacy day where folks can come on down and participate in rallies from folks across the state with disabilities and make your voice be heard there on Capitol Hill. And we'll have more details about that at the end of the presentation. Next slide.
Do you see it?
Oh, very well. Yes, and this is our MOCIL website actually. So this is what it looks like when you visit our website. So our 22 Centers for Independent Living coordinate our efforts together across the state, and our work is presented here on the MOCIL website. So you can always stay up to date with what we are working on your behalf as the 22 centers. And if you want to click on Our Work, Shannon, this is the tab that you'll visit to see our legislative priorities.
This is Shelby. I'm the one with the mouse, but do you see this?
Yes, we do see it. It's up on the screen. You just click on Our Work and then scroll down just a bit. There we go. And so, yes, so there are the legislative priorities that I just mentioned. And if you want to scroll up just a tad and click on Take Action. On this tab, you can actually figure out who your state reps are based on your address. So it's always based on where you live. And we encourage you all to contact your legislator based on where you live. So they want to hear from folks who are in their district and not outside of their district. And that has a lot of power. So always, contact the folks where you live. That's where your voice is going to have the most power to be heard. And they're always wanting to hear from you about, your lived experience, and that's what's going to be most powerful. So going to the next slide, this is a website through the whole person, which is, again, is where I work. And this actually gives you a really cool opportunity to track the bills that we're actively tracking through the legislative session. So you can click on this link. It's thewholeperson.org. And it's going to take you to our website. And from there, you're going to click on a tab that says Core Services, and then Advocacy. And then there's going to be another drop-down menu that says TWP Legislative Priorities. So we'll just walk you through this briefly. So scroll down just a bit. And I really like this tool. So it lists out, yeah, you can keep scrolling. And this first section just describes that, the purpose of this page is to keep our consumers and the community updated on the city, state, and federal level laws impacting people with disabilities in both Kansas and Missouri. So because our SIL functions in both states, there'll be some Kansas and Missouri laws, but this is just a great way to follow what we're following. And we follow MOCIL's legislative priorities. So whatever bills or laws MOCIL is tracking, we're also going to have those bills represented here. Scroll down. And we'll also try to include correspondence that we're sending to legislators, whether it's in Jeff City or at the state level. Scroll down a little further, and you're going to see our legislative priorities. Scroll down a little further. And then you're going to see track bills.
You might have a lag, Kendra. I'm down at monitoring. Is that what you see?
Okay, that's not what I see, but if everyone else can see it, that's great. So visible on your screen should be bills that are marked as support, oppose, monitoring. And this is a really cool tool because it'll show you the latest actions that that bill has undergone in the legislative process. So it'll show you what committee that bill is under. It'll show you the bill name. And it'll also show you the bill number. So you can look it up by bill name or number. And then also there's widgets where you can share this out on social media. So if you want to share this with your friends, your family, or your staff or consumers, there are links there to Facebook and other social media platforms where you can share that out right away with anyone in your network. So that's just another place where you can follow more legislative priorities that are happening. You can look up that bill based on the hearing so that if you want to go to Jeff City or anywhere else, you can provide testimony on that legislation and other things like that. So let's go back over to the PowerPoint. And the last thing that I want to share with you all for today is how to participate in legislative alerts or action alerts. And this is something that we do quite a lot within our MOCIL legislative advocacy group and also as centers. And so let's just briefly talk about what you can expect to hear from our group as we go throughout session. So we'll just hop back over to the PowerPoint.
I did do that. I don't know if everyone else can see it, but.
Okay. Well, I've been having tech issues all day, so apologies there. I have no doubt that you did. So I'm going to follow along on my own. That way I can catch up to the group because clearly I'm behind.
I was going to say, I can read through them if you're not able to.
No problem. Okay, so if we are on the how to participate in action alerts, yes, great. Okay, all righty. So action alerts, these action alerts will ask the reader to take specific action steps. Normally, this will involve asking people to call, write, or visit their legislator and urge him or her to vote yes or no or take a specific action on a bill. So this will involve possibly contacting the governor, your legislator, or even as staff, we may ask our consumers to contact their legislators. And this also usually involves individual direct contact. We don't encourage group emails or group contacts. This is something that everyone can do on their own. So the next slide. Right now, the whole person, for example, this is going to be a live example that everyone can participate in. The whole person is sponsoring or is championing a bill called Lead K. And so I'm working on this bill with one of my colleagues. His name is Clark Corriganes, and he is a part of the Missouri Commission for the Deaf and Hard of Hearing as a commissioner. And the Lead K bill's been passed in a couple other states, including Kansas, but this legislation requires the Missouri Department of Elementary and Secondary Education to establish language developmental milestones for children who are deaf and hard of hearing. And it's really important because currently the Missouri Department of Health and Senior Services, Early Intervention, nor the Department of Education or Secondary Education, neither one has a program that tracks the language assessment for children in the Education Department in Missouri. So children are just falling through the cracks. And that has a direct impact on a number of things, but including the future of our workforce development for these future adults who will have difficulty entering into jobs because they won't have the language acquisition skills that they need. So this bill will require the state of Missouri to start tracking that assessment. So right now, there's two versions of this bill, and this is very common practice to have multiple versions of a bill. Right now, SB 340 is being sponsored by Senator Greg Razor. That's him pictured on the right, advocating for this bill. He is a senator for this District 7. And then House Bill 106, sponsored by Representative Jerome Barnes of District 28. Next slide. And so this is a time when anyone can get involved in this legislation. And so right now, the new Speaker of the House is Representative Dean Plocher, and he will be the person who decides if this bill is sent to committee. And so that's the next step in the legislative process for this bill to be heard in the committee. And so anyone can contact Representative Plocher. We're encouraging everyone to contact him to ask him to assign HB 106 or the Lead K bill to the Education Committee. And so very quickly, I just wanted to run through some examples of some scripts that the Missouri Deaf Commission has sent out to individuals who want to participate. And you'll see very similar language to this in future action alerts that may come out of MOCIL as well. So next slide. So this is a sample email for the Lead K bill. So it reads, Representative Poacher, my name is blank, and I am contacting you, asking you to please consider assigning HB 106, sponsored by Representative Jerome Barnes, to the Education Committee. This legislation will result in the establishment of educational tools and developmental guidelines to assist the families and educators of deaf and hard of hearing children so that these children can be kindergarten ready when the school, when they reach school and begin their academic progress with the same opportunities as their peers. Thank you. Very short and sweet.
And Kendra, this is Jackie. Just for anyone that actually does send an email, his last name is actually spelled Plocher, so no U in there.
Oh, thank you for pointing that out. Yes, thank you. So, no U. Thank you.
You can fix that before it's sent out too.
For sure, thank you. Another sample message, this is just an example of a social media post. So there are a number of ways that you can reach out to your legislators. Another one could potentially be social media. And this one reads, Dear Representative Poacher, as the Speaker of the House, I ask you to consider assigning HB 106, sponsored by Representative Barnes, to the Education Committee. Thank you. Short and sweet, much shorter than the email. And then the last example is a sample phone call script. And it says, hello, my name is blank, and I'm calling from the city of blank in Missouri. Representative Jerome Barnes has submitted HB 106, which would establish an assessment tool and program to ensure that deaf and hard of hearing children are progressing in their language development appropriately. Too many Missouri deaf and hard of hearing children start school with weak language and cognitive skills. This does not have to be the case in Missouri. Please assign HB 106 to the Education Committee, and let's start making progress towards equal opportunities for deaf and hard of hearing children in our state. Thank you for taking my call. And so one more note about the Lead K bill is that the Missouri Deaf and Hard of Hearing Commission will be hosting town halls across the state to hear from the community and get your input about this legislation. So they'll be starting, there was already one on January 24th in Creve Coeur, and there'll be others across the state, including one here on March 31st, March 11th at the Whole Person. And so feel free to reach out to the Missouri Deaf and Hard of Hearing Commission with those dates. And so my last point, or last few points and key takeaways are that when you're participating in legislative actions or calls or alerts, think about your story, your connection, or your consumer stories as you advocate. Make a plan and commit time to contacting your legislators. And as you're working, share the information and the updates with your consumers and other organizations, and even your friends and family so they can participate. And don't give up. Stay committed to the process and keep recommitting your time. And with that, I will turn it over to JMO. Thank you.
Thanks, Kendra. I'm Jeanette Mott Oxford. I go by the nickname JMO, and I am newly hired at Paraquad. I started on January 3rd, and I'm thankful to several of you on this call that have been teaching me and helping me get acquainted with your issues. I may be new to Paraquad, but I'm not new to public policy in Missouri. I was hired by Reform Organization of Welfare in 1991. A statewide organization working on poverty, and I've worked in public policy in Missouri ever since then. So I know the ins and outs, and one of my goals is to not only strengthen Paraquad, but to strengthen all of MOCIL. We know how it is in the not-for-profit world. I bet none of you would say, gosh, we are overstaffed here. I just don't have enough in my job description. So one of my goals is to not just make Paraquad stronger around advocacy, but to be a resource to you and to help you train folks, answer your questions, help you feel comfortable in your advocacy in the Capitol building, where I'll be spending quite a bit of time between now and the middle of May. So feel free to reach out to me. My contact information is there, my mobile number, my email. If you're in Jefferson City and it's your first time or your second time and you're not quite sure how to find which one of those bathrooms in the building has the thing you can push and the door opens, because a lot of those bathrooms are hard to get in and out of in the Capitol. They're very heavy doors. I walk with a cane. I'm 68 and have scoliosis and a walking disability, and I have to push really hard to get in some of those doors. There are a very limited number of the bathrooms in the Capitol that have the automatic door opener. So I can help you maybe with some of your accessibility needs because of how I had to figure out how to get around the building the best way that I could over especially the period when I was a state representative from 2005 to 2012. I needed to move quickly between committee hearings, et cetera. So I know some places to duck through, in order to get someone somewhere faster. And I'll be willing to help you find your way. Building relationships with your own state representative and senators is invaluable, as Kendra already told you. You can invite them to visit your center. You can meet them with coffee and tell them what your staff and your participants are experiencing. Having the voices of personally impacted people tell their own stories is a very powerful thing to do. And one of the things I do is I build my address book is I make some notes, down in the notes field about what do they prefer. Are they a person that likes you to contact them by email? Do they like you to go through their assistants? Or do they like a text message? That makes it easier for you to be productive with your time if you make a note of their preferences. We could go to that next slide, please. The House and Senate websites are invaluable as you do your advocacy. Most of us who work in this kind of field look at the House and Senate websites around Thursday afternoon to get a sense of what we'll be doing the following week, because a lot of the hearings are going to be there. People like Jackie will help us stay in touch with the ones that get posted with only 24 hours notice, which is what's the minimum that's required. And we might have to call people to action in a hurry, but watch for our messages when something like that happens. The hearings are live streamed. You can see video of the House hearings, but you only get audio of the Senate hearings. If you can't be there, but you want to start to get to know the personalities of some of the committee members, watching these video live streams is a good way to do that. And so I highly recommend that as a way to build your knowledge of what works. As you watch people engage with witnesses, you start to notice, oh, this is a person where a budgetary argument works. Oh, this is a person where a values-based argument works. So you can get some sense of those kind of things. Online testimony can be submitted in the House until midnight of the day of the hearing. The Senate doesn't have an online testimony system that I know of, but it's sometimes possible to have an ally in the building deliver your testimony for you. If you're from one of the community independent living centers and you can't be there and I happen to be in the building, I would do my best to turn it in for you so that it gets into the record. And there'll be times that Jackie can possibly do that as well. You can check with her about that. Or maybe your agency also has a contact lobbyist. Sometimes I send messages to individual members of the committee if I couldn't be there, because if they get something on our letterhead, that's another way to help them remember what we said, even though it's not in the official record. Next, please. I'm going to have this sent around after this meeting is over, is a chart of how a bill becomes a law in Missouri. This is something that was put together through Missouri Foundation for Health a few years ago through their LINK project. It's one of the better descriptions in the back of it that Shelby's going to show you in a minute here, or whoever's controlling our slides. has a glossary of some terms as well. So this will help you get smarter if advocacy in Missouri is new to you. And there's always something I'm learning, even after 40 years of this stuff. So don't feel like you need to sit on the bench because you don't know enough. We've all got to start somewhere, and we're always learning, every one of us. So just jump in. And if you have any questions about this handout when you get it, I'll be glad to set up a time to go over it with you. And then the next slide. There's some other great resources that we mentioned, the House and Senate websites. Those addresses are just simply house.mo.gov and senate.mo.gov. But also Laura is going to tell us just a little bit about this great resource from the Governor's Council on Disability, their legislative education project. I just became aware of this because we're working on this today, and I clicked there and found some great videos and some great resources, and I've signed up to get a weekly briefing from the Governor's Council on Disability so that I can keep track of what they are watching for. So Laura, could you tell us just a little bit about that?
Absolutely. Thanks for inviting me, JMO. It was kind of a last minute invite, so I'm kind of going off the cuff here. So the resources on the slide that you see there, we are actually not doing the Q&As this year. We're actually doing live webinars, and I believe Paul is on this call, or at least he was. He attended one of our first ones in January. We have one coming up next week at 7 p.m. on February 1st. And then we have two on March 16th, one at 10 a.m. and then one at 7 p.m. as well. And they're basically to kind of, as Jayma said, orient people to what it's like to advocate, the process of how a bill becomes a law, how you testify at a hearing, things like that, that can get people really knowledgeable about what they're doing. So when they start doing it, that they have a little bit of clue and they're not completely lost, because that happens a lot for brand new people. We do have the videos on the website as well if you don't want to attend a live training. The videos on there are things like how to talk at a hearing, how to develop your relationship with your legislator, because as everyone has said, that is incredibly important. And then kind of how bill becomes a law kind of thing. Just some general information about the General Assembly itself. And then we also have one on voting, but that's not quite as relevant to this situation. But those are your options as far as we're concerned. And like JMO said, we do a weekly legislative update where we track all the disability related bills that are going through the Missouri House and Missouri Senate. We don't track the federal legislation, so you'll have to turn to somebody else for that. But for the state level legislation, we really try our best to track all the bills. And there are a lot. So there may be a couple that I miss once in a while, but we do our best. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Laura, and thanks for coming in with very little notice. I met you earlier in another meeting earlier today, and it's like, oh, what? I wouldn't have to talk about something that's not mine if I invited Laura. So thanks for that. I wanted to say two things. One is, in addition to advocacy with our General Assembly, there are other kinds of advocacy that have to happen sometimes. You know, for example, last night I helped to facilitate a meeting with what we're calling the On-Demand Paratransit Coalition to try to improve on-demand transportation options for people with disabilities in the St. Louis area, where our Caller Ride program is horrible. Kendra, I understand that you all do a little better in Kansas City, that you've got some things going that we don't, but we should talk about, is it as good as they claim it is? Because I don't want to toot their horn if they don't deserve it. We're going to have to engage with an agency that gets some state funding and some city funding, Metro here in the St. Louis area. So we met to start designing our campaign on that. And so I can be a resource for you too about engaging with other units of government, whether it's a local, whether it's an agency or like a city council, that kind of thing. Because I've worked on a whole lot of campaigns over the years. I am old as dirt. And I've done a lot of things. So I can help you with that. And I'm proud of it. I'm so glad to be 68. There's that. And then the other thing I'd like to say is we have bad public policy about people with disabilities because of prejudice and stigma. Like many public policy issues, the issue is that legislators have some fears, they have some biases, they have some myths and stereotypes in their minds So do employers, right? I mean, there's just a whole lot of people out there that don't understand the reality of living with a disability and the possibilities, the gifts that people bring with them. So how do you break down a prejudice? How do you do that? The most effective way to break down a prejudice is repeated positive interaction with the object of your prejudice. So how can we make that happen? How can we help legislators, local elected officials, employers, others that are decision makers, gatekeepers, get past the lies they've been told, the misinformation they've seen, the stuff that media reinforces, and help them care, because all public policy is about our values. How do we help them care enough to have the political will to do the right thing? Help them have repeated positive interactions with the object of their prejudice. That's how we make progress. So I invite you to think with me about how to make those positive interactions happen over and over again until we get what we need, so that our mission is fulfilled. So I'm glad to be with you on the team, and I'll turn it over to our next presenter.
Jackie, I thought that your slide was in here.
Well, I was gonna say, I don't need a slide. I can
Yeah.
just talk. And unfortunately, I have to get on a call at 3, so I will keep this short, but it's nice to meet you all. Between Jeanette and Laura, you guys covered everything that goes on in the building essentially. So I don't have to reiterate any of that, but as was said before, my name's Jackie Barget. I am one of 5 lobbyists that work for Barget and Associates and lobby on the center's behalf in Jeff City. Essentially, for those of you that don't know what a lobbyist is, in essence, we are your eyes and ears in the building. Not all of you can be in the building every Monday through Thursday when they are in session. So we are there to make sure that there is someone that can be a in-between middleman for legislators to get information to you all and for us to educate legislators on your issues. As Jeanette said, they're educating and making those contacts with people is the number one way to get anything done in that building. We have a significant amount of new legislators this year due to term limits. So making contact, building relationships, making sure that people know your issues and what's going on in your guys' lives and organizations is very, very important. The only other thing I will say, when you are contacting legislators and talking to them, I have to tell this to all of my clients, regardless of what they are, but you all specifically, our issues are not partisan issues. You can be a Republican, you can be a Democrat, you can completely vehemently oppose something that a legislator that you are talking to believes in. But on this issue, on our issues, on disability issues, it doesn't matter. You can still have a conversation with them and encourage them to support disability rights. And I think that's a very important thing to keep in mind. You might disagree with 100% of what that person is pushing, but it doesn't matter. We're talking about this issue and making sure that they understand disability rights and the movement that needs to be made in Missouri. Besides that, I am in Jeff City every single day that the legislators are. So if you see me in the halls, stop, say hi, introduce yourself. I will help as much as I can. I will make introductions. And the only other thing, if you have a very bad interaction with a legislator, which is very rare, or if you have an interaction with a legislator where you find out, oh my gosh, I go to church with this person, or oh, their son plays over here, or someone in their family receives services, that is something that's always very good to make sure that information gets to me, because that's always stuff that's I can either help out if it was a bad interaction or make sure to take note of that if it was a good one, so that we can hopefully use that to our advantage moving forward. But besides that's all I had. I said I would keep it short.
Well, that was enough. Thank you for all your work and just for helping inspire us, because having a good lobbyist is really awesome. So
I appreciate you guys make it easy. You are very, very engaged and active, and you guys have built a very good team in the Capitol. So you make it easy for us.
well, thank you. I'm just really excited about all of this information that we've shared and just the leaders that we have on the ground, and then just the potential for all of us to do some really great work. There are some dates to remember. The Disability Rights Legislative Day, which has been going on for over 20 years now, is March 1st. It's Wednesday. Several legislators are being invited to speak. The actual rally will be at 11. There is a website now that has been up and running, and you can go and sign up for alerts, and they will give you dates and information as things get closer. A lot of us take consumers to this event, and it's really great to be able to do that. Since COVID, that's been more difficult. They are live streaming it. So, you could have an event at your center if you're not taking a van, and everyone could still gather and you could live stream it together. People could watch it individually. Registering is helpful because that helps the committee kind of count the numbers. It's been great the last couple of years. The DD Council is actually putting about $10,000 worth toward this event. That's how it's able to be live streamed. The afternoon will again consist of Zoom meetings with legislators. So if people aren't able to come to the Capitol, they can stick around after the live stream and join these Zooms with designated legislators. So that's another thing that's coming. And I think there's going to be a Facebook group started. So really exciting. March 1st, the whatever it's called, the theme is We the People. So the focus really is, this isn't about, intellectual disabilities or people with blindness or people who have mobility disabilities. It's everyone together coming to, talk about disability rights and how important it is to be inclusive, and to remember that along the lifespan, a disability can occur at any age, any income, lots of things don't matter. The IL Day at the Capitol, which is being organized by the MOCIL Legislative Committee and will be marketed a little bit as we get closer, will be at the end of March. So that's going to be March 28th. And that's another, event where you can bring consumers. A lot of times it's staff and board members. We try to set up legislative visits ahead of time. And then we have packets that we give to the representatives and senators on the centers and information regarding their districts that the centers cover. We give you the talking points, and it's really easy. Making the appointments is probably the hardest thing to do. And I'm sure, Jackie and Jeanette or JMO can help with that if you can't track down a legislator, if you can't get a hold of them to make an appointment. I'm really bad with names. I'm sorry. I want to call you different things. April 10th is the MOCIL meeting, and there will be an alcove reserved on April 11th. So if anyone is going up for that meeting in April, there will be a chance to maybe get together with some other centers and make visits that day too. So that's just another thing coming in the spring. And then just, Jennifer Gundy is the chair of the Legislative Committee. We're meeting weekly on Thursdays via Zoom at 1:30. We're following and tracking the bills, like Kendra said, and sending out alerts. Lots of action going on right now, trying to figure out the best way to be represented on state and national levels. But if you're interested in that committee, I think we forget advocacy is one of our core services. It's something that we have to do. And it really helps, I think, make the everyday day-to-day stuff even more fun and exciting, and you can get a lot of adrenaline pumping if you get involved. So anyway, just to put that out there. So at this time, I will stop sharing. This PowerPoint will be shared along with the documents that JMO mentioned. And if anybody has any questions, this would be the time to ask. Silence is good at times. I know some of you maybe have already had this information and you're a pro already, but you can use this recording to help train other staff. You can send it out to consumers if you want. I don't think there was any, confidential information that we can't share. So feel free to use it however you need to. So watch for the email with the recording and the documents, and we'll all see each other hopefully either at DRLD or the IL Day at the Capitol. So thank you so much. And thank you to all the presenters. I really appreciate it.
Have a great weekend, everyone.
Thank you. You too.
Thanks. Great to be with you today.